Primordial Radio.
It's Adam here, and it is Primordial Radio, and it's the radio residency. And for the month of February, I am joined by an artist who's, I can definitely say an artist who I probably listened to for well over half of my life. KILLSWITCH Engage were a massive band to me in my teenage years. They still continue to be. So many great memories of KILLSWITCH Engage, and I'm delighted today to be joined by vocalist Jesse Leach. Jesse, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Excited to continue to talk about this album and gear up for tour and all that. It's an exciting time, for sure.
Yeah, I'm assuming you've been doing a lot of talking about the album recently, haven't you?
It's been 3 weeks of pretty much full days. Yeah, it's been a lot. Yeah. But you know what? I'm into it.
Good. Well, I'm glad. And hopefully today, we'll talk about some other things as well. We're going to talk about some tracks that you've picked from various different things growing up and everything, and artists that have influenced you. But I want to first obviously start by talking about the new album. It's called This Consequence. It's out on the 21st of February. How excited are you for the world to hear this finally?
It's an excitement that is purpose-driven, and it feels important to me. So it's a whole other level of excitement for sure.
And I heard about sort of the recording process. You guys have approached it a little bit differently this time. Can you run us through that? And also, how and why did you make a decision to sort of change things up? You guys have been together 25 years now, I know, on and off. But what gave you that impetus to kind of change the way you're going to get in the studio and do this?
Yeah, I think Atonement just took a lot out of us, all of us, and especially Adam, who put in the most work. We're dealing with 22 songs, a lot of pre-production, a lot of rewrites and overdubs, and Adam took a lot on his shoulders. So coming out of that record, the discussion was, let's make this more collaborative. And naturally was like, well, how do we switch things up? Discussing it. And Adam's like, well, why don't we jam? Why don't we get into the same room and just crack some beers and play some riffs and see what happens? And that turned into like 4 different sessions of writing and hanging out, and that vibe and that feeling and watching things being created in real time, it sort of reminded me why we even started and brought us back to 25 years, 20, however long it's been. And it was magical, man. It was really cool. And that sort of set the pace for the rest of the record. Is even while I was tracking and recording and writing, in the back of my mind, I could sort of envision us jamming in the same room. That spirit and that camaraderie carried me through the record.
I mean, because that's usually how bands get together, isn't it? They start off in a jam room. You'll have a friend, maybe, that friend plays the drums, I started playing guitar, should we just get in a room and make some noise? And it is, I did it a few times when I was a teenager. It didn't lead to anything successful. Actually, I'm going to be honest, it didn't lead to anything, but it is exciting, isn't it? Just that feeling of music.
It is. It's something you kind of can't put words to, because music, I think, transcends language. It transcends all things, because it's not just you're hearing it, you're feeling it, the vibration of sounds. I'm fascinated by, megahertz and sound waves and how they affect the body. And, sometimes you put on a piece of music and it could even just be an instrumental and it makes you feel a certain way. I love a lot of ambient music, for example. It puts me in a good state of mind. Or I'll even put on stuff like green noise and white noise when I'm trying to concentrate. There's something to be said about sonic power, and music just has this ability to do that. And then you put a message behind it, and then off to the races. There's a vehicle for something that can really create some type of a change or help somebody in some way or be therapeutic in some way. So I think recognizing the power that you have as a musician is crucial, and using it for something good.
There's 2 things I want to pull up from that. The first thing is like the whole digital versus analog theory. Why are people loving vinyl? And there's, why are people going back to getting big speaker systems and things? And, I was learning about in uni the difference of, what happens when you convert something from analog to digital, and you're blocking off everything below 20 hertz, everything above 20,000 hertz. And there's so many people and so many theories about it's in those frequencies that we can't hear. That's where some of the magic happens. And it's that. Do you think that with that in mind, people sometimes are losing something when, you're just chucking music on a phone, just leaving it on a desk and listening to it through these small speakers. Do you you feel that too then?
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, I do it occasionally if I don't have any other means, if I'm out working somewhere or whatever. But yeah, headphones or Bluetooth speaker. But you mentioned, vinyl. Like, to me, there's something magic. We just moved into this new home, and we have a bar area in the middle of the house. It's this nice little bar, and there's an old school vinyl player with the horn and a needle. And if I listen to Tom Waits in my car versus at my bar dropping that needle down, and you hear the initial noise of the needle hit and that first piano lick or that first guitar tone, there's a magic there to that audio that you just can't digital. Like you said, it's not the same. It's not.
Yeah.
And
it's
it makes
even
you
the dust. It's like living in that moment, isn't it? It's popping and it's doing something which is just there. It's kind of live.
It's part of the art form, I think. You could even say the same thing about cassette tapes. It sounds different. There's a warmth there. Listening to Black Sabbath on vinyl versus listening to it on Spotify. Huge difference. There's a whole bottom end that you're not getting. The heaviness that is Black Sabbath can only be fully experienced in an analog listening session. That's for damn sure.
I'm a massive Caius fan.
Yeah.
It's
Love
the
Caius.
same for Caius, isn't it? The way that was produced, obviously, there's so much low end, but I can't listen to them when I'm out for a run on Bluetooth headphones, and if I'm in the car as much, it has to be on a big system because it just doesn't do it justice otherwise. I don't know, you can't get the power and the punch.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's an odd one. And I was also going to say about guitar playing and bouncing back ideas between, because I've tried all these little digital amp systems and stuff, and you don't get a power of standing in front of a big speaker.
Being in a room with amplifiers, without in-ear monitors, just being in a room with sound like the old days, there's nothing like it, dude. There's nothing like hearing a guitar player turn on an amp and you hear the little hum of the tubes warming up, and plug that thing in and turn it up and just hitting a chord. It's beautiful. I love it. As opposed to putting it through a processing board or a Kemper, or having your inner monitors a certain way, which serve a great purpose when you're live. But when you're just jamming on something, I miss that so much. I wish I could have a band just locally here for fun to be able to just plug in and stand in a room with music hitting me in the face. I miss it a lot. It's just, there's a magic to it.
It's the magic that can sometimes be lost with the whole convenience. Everyone wants something smaller, don't want to carry an amp up the stairs. Everyone I speak to about vinyl, they're like, I got rid of loads of it when I was moving house. It was just too heavy and big. And, a lot of them now are buying it back.
Yeah.
This has been quite a nostalgic conversation so far, talking about, feeling like going back to the past. But there's things on the new album that don't feel traditional KILLSWITCH. They feel new, they feel exciting. Broken Glass, that's very different. That doesn't sound like KILLSWITCH before. I mean, I can hear now talking about Black Sabbath, obviously you're a fan, big sludgy riffs and like almost black metal in places. Tell me a little bit about that track.
Yeah, Justin has been, a taste maker in this band. He's responsible for Aftermath as well in this album. But he presented that song to us in that jam space. And I remember hearing it and just thinking to myself, well, this is different. This is awesome. It got me really excited because to step outside of I guess I don't want to use the word confines because it doesn't feel confining, but the signature sound that we have, to be able to push in a direction outside of that, to me is exciting. People have grown to anticipate a certain style from us, and that's fine. I like it, but pushing that and getting outside of that is creatively very fulfilling for me. So when I heard that, I knew it had to be different. And I actually started with coming up with odd harmonies for that song because I wanted it to sound weird. And then it was just, raw aggression. Like this song has to be, it just called for raw aggression. And that all started within the jam room, but I didn't fully realize that song until I sat with it for a while because I wanted to make sure that the emotion and the angst and the feelings I was feeling matched with the power of the song. So to me, that song stands out. The Fall of Us stands out. And it's just all of us contributing and wanting to push the boundaries of what this band is, and it feels like we've kind of anteed up and taken it to a bit of a next level, if you will.
It does sound fresh, and obviously, look, you've been together for 25 years. In that time, you've amassed a lot of fans. You know, you sell out huge venues, you play massive festivals, and in your press release, Adam wrote about the goal is to make the fans happy. And I think some bands fall into the almost the pattern of, oh, we've got to do what the fans want. But from what you're saying there, you are still pushing the boundaries. How difficult is it to find that balance? And, you know, is there a part of you, because there are some different things on this album, you know, it's very much a KILLSWITCH album, so anyone who hasn't heard any of it, don't be scared or anything if you're a massive fan. But how, you know, is there a little bit of excitement to how the fans will react to some of these more different tracks?
There is, and I also think it's important to be satisfied within yourself. You know, I think bands can fall into the trap of pleasing the audience too much. I think what makes a band great is when they hone their creativity and you lead your fans in a direction. I think it's dangerous. You can run the risk of becoming a nostalgia act if you play too much to the audience, because sometimes the audience doesn't know what they want, you know, until they hear something different. And then they're like, oh, that's unexpected. That's pretty cool. I didn't see that coming. And I actually really like that. So for me, I mean, bands that I'm a fan of, when they turn a bit of a corner and go into another direction, I'm like, let's sit with this. Oftentimes the different things become my favorite because I'm so used to a certain sound. But I know what Adam says in that sentiment, because we do care very much about our fan base, and they do sort of, especially live, lead us. If they're in a good place and the audience is great, naturally the show is going to be really good. But I think with records and your style and your sound, you need to be careful with pleasing somebody and then sort of internally being satisfied artistically to know that you're doing something that feels genuine. It doesn't feel forced into a corner because, oh, this is the KILLSWITCH sound. You know, for me, it's exciting to push that. And we're not going too far outside of the confines. It's not like we wrote a black metal song straight up or a death metal song straight up. You're still getting the elements that sort of you've gotten used to, where you're going to have a message, you're going to have some melody here. I think it all sort of still is in a comfortable place for most fans.
Definitely. And KILLSWITCH has always had powerful messages, but you know, there's been a lot written about some of the new tracks, and Forever Aligned was one that I really liked, talking about friendship and true love being far beyond human comprehension. And you know, that sort of friendship has to fall into you guys being a band. You know, as I say, there were periods where it was on and off, but by and large 25 years. How tough has that been to maintain, or how exciting has that been to maintain?
It's amazing, honestly, to be able to have a relationship with these guys that we do, because it's not, you know, all buddy all the time. There's a mutual respect there, knowing when somebody needs their space on tour, knowing when someone's going through a hard time and they need a little extra attention. You know, we've been through it all together: divorces, deaths, anniversaries, you know, all that type of stuff that you go through. Someone losing a pet, you know, like heavy stuff where you're out on the road and you know, that's your family. You got to figure out how to make it work. We've had a few difficult conversations to keep each other in check. But for the most part, I'm proud to say those guys are not that difficult to deal with. Like, even the crew that we take with us, it's not just the band, it's our crew. Some of those guys have been with us for almost 20 years, you know, like it's family. And it's not perfect, but it's pretty damn great, man. And the fact that we can still be doing this at this level. And when I think about tour, some of that excitement is just being able to hang out with those guys. You know, that's pretty damn cool. And we don't separate. We're not sort of that band that needs to be together all the time, like on days off. But there are times when we, you know, for example, we were out on tour and, you know, we were out during a holiday. We're away from our families. We had a nice big family meal together. We all sat at the same table at this restaurant and celebrated. So, like, there's beautiful moments like that where you can, as you travel the world with your pals, you can have these great moments. But it's really just based on mutual respect and communication.
It's an odd balance, isn't it? Because people, you know, a lot of businesses now, they talk about the culture of, oh, we're a family business, you know. But when you are in a band, I think people automatically assume it's treated like a family, but it also has to be treated like a business. You know, there are big decisions, and especially the music industry nowadays. What's your like go-to for the band to kind of chill out together, keep in check? You know, what are you doing on the tour bus when you're all sitting in the little living area? What's your go-to? Do you have a card game, play Xbox, something like that?
Well, it depends. If we're all together, which is kind of rare in that lounge because not everyone fits there, but there have been nights where we're all in there and somebody's sitting on the counter. I usually jump up on the counter, drinking beers, listening to like 80s music and busting balls, or we're all watching like South Park together on the TVs, or we have a couple movie nights where we've watched horror movies together. So, there are those moments, but we'll break up in little factions too. There's the front lounge is usually sports guys, Adam and Alan, on our crew, like they love sports. Justin, they'll all be sitting there watching a football game or a baseball game. And then the back lounge is usually me and Josh and Mike and whoever else. And we're watching a horror movie, or we're listening to like reggae music and talking about, the state of the world, like, deep conversations, or someone's in the back playing some punk rock and we're all drinking beers, hanging out. So it depends, but you have to know where to coexist. But during the pandemic, when we were coming out of the pandemic and getting back on the road, we had these things called parking lot parties where we would set up a tent, a bunch of chairs, cooler, do a cookout, have a screen and play like Young Frankenstein or Monty Python movies, and other bands on tour that we still had to social distance with would sit nearby so they could watch the movie, and we still kind of talk and hang out. So KILLSWITCH is always down to hang, and we try to create cool spaces to hang with each other and with other bands, or even with fans. Don't be surprised if you see all of us out at a pub after a show, hanging out, having a couple of beers. Like, that happens. Like, that's just the kind of guys we are.
So I want to know, if you're in the pub and there's a jukebox, or if you're in the bus, if you're in the bus and you are, putting some music on, 3 tracks, what are the 3, and they don't have to be serious ones, they might just be ones that you all enjoy, but what are the 3 that are most likely to be played on the KILLSWITCH bus?
Wow, we're all so different, but let's go. Everlong by the Foo Fighters is a
great track.
Is a band favorite. I think that album in general gets played a decent amount. Between them and Weezer's Blue record, those records seem to come up when people are drinking and having fun. Then I would go 80s. I love Def Leppard, Hysteria, 80s rock. Like, that's definitely a fun one. And then I'm going to throw, I could go a couple of different directions. Death metal is always being played. Cannibal Corpse is a band favorite. We love playing Cannibal Corpse or Decapitated. But I have to throw this in here because it's so odd and it gets annoying after a while. Weird Al Yankovic is played way too much on the bus. There's a couple of dudes in our band that it's just on. And the joke gets old after a while. I walk in and I'm like, this again? Come on, dude. So yeah, Weird Al Yankovic is the curveball.
Give us one track. Go on. There's got to be a track that. What grinds your gears most of Weird Al Yankovic?
And don't get me wrong, I do love him, but I just don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
All the time. Off the top of my head, I mean, they all kind of annoy me. I guess I'm Fat. It's just like that Michael Jackson song.
Amazing. Well, I think this might be the first time we're going to play a Weird Al track on Primordial Radio, but I'm all for it. I think that's great. Right, I want to move the conversation on a little bit to yourself. I never knew about the band Seamless.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that band. Tell me how that came about, because I never imagined you kind of being in a more, Wikipedia calls them blues rock. I'd say it's definitely a stoner rock type project. How did that come to be?
So Seamless was... After I had left KILLSWITCH initially, I wanted nothing to do with music. I was in a really dark place. And the former drummer of Shadows Fall, Derek Kurzweil, and the former guitar player of KILLSWITCH, he was in KILLSWITCH for a while, and he was in a band called Overcast with Mike for a while, Pete Cortez. Those two guys were in a rock and roll band called Medium at the time, and they wanted to form a new group and had a bunch of new material. And Pete was the main songwriter, and I love his style. He's a great guitar player. And they sent me the tracks via email, and we're like, hey, man, like, we're just doing this project for fun. We're thinking, you know, put out a record, play some bars on the weekends for beer and for cash, and have fun. Like, just come join us to jam and have fun. And it's something that won't put you back in the spotlight of metal. So they sent me the tracks. I'm like, this is cool. Like, not something I would have ever considered doing. I mean, I like rock and roll. I've always liked rock and roll. I was raised on, you know, Zeppelin and Sabbath and bands like that, but I never saw myself doing it. And then I heard this music. I'm like, this is really cool. And Derek sent me a mixtape of, like, you mentioned Caius, Corrosion of Conformity, Fu Manchu, Deep Purple, Cactus, just like rock and roll. And it was like, this is fun, dude. I could totally get into this. I could see myself doing this type of stuff. Because I've always liked bands like Crowbar, you know, like the more sort of sludgy New Orleans style metal. But Caius was a huge one for me. When I first was aware of them through Seamless, that was like, oh, wow, this is cool. It's like punk rock slowed down and detuned. Radical. I loved it. So that started out as just for fun, just drinking beers with the boys, playing a few gigs, and then very quickly became something where the offer was on the table to get out and tour on it maybe. And this is, you know, some time had passed and I sort of felt more comfortable in my own skin. I felt less pressure. The vocals were different enough where I wasn't blowing my voice out all the time. So I gave it a go, and it kind of made me fall in love with touring again and exposed me to bands that I wouldn't normally listen to. And we did a tour with Fu Manchu and Valiant Thor, and it was the time of our lives. We had so much fun. And we toured with The Sword a few times, and it just really opened me up to a whole new world of music that I still love to this day, and influences my voice to this day, because I figured out how to sing blues and bending notes, and it really helped me learn how to be a better vocalist, albeit still not a great vocalist during that time, but expanding my repertoire, opening my mind, and getting back on the road. And ironically, the Killswitch Engage van that I toured in with Killswitch, that I had a mental breakdown in and like, you know, fell out of love in that van. Seamless bought that exact van. Once Killswitch graduated to a tour bus, they sold that van and we bought it. And that was the first van that I jumped back in. So I left touring in this van with a bitter taste and like didn't want to do it. I got back in the van, same van with Seamless, and fell back in love with touring again. So it's really sort of poetic.
You're talking about your voice. Obviously, the thing is with Killswitch, it's the choruses are so melodic and the choruses are so well sung. How do you keep a voice together like that? And I'm just asking out of interest because it must be quite a strain doing this. You know, your tours are massive. So what's your technique in keeping your voice healthy?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it is knowing technique. You know, I had to learn that the hard way after vocal surgery in 2018 and sort of relearning how to speak again. And my mentor and teacher and dear friend, Melissa Cross, really helped a lot, not just with a technique change, which I did eventually figure out how to do, but the existing technique that I was using, how to improve upon it. And it's all about vocal placement. It's knowing where the voice needs to sit to be in a less damaging place. And through that, I learned, I started toying with Mongolian throat singing and really studying like the voice can do so many different things. But if it's not placed in the right place, you're going to have your vocal folds slapping together. You're going to do damage. So it's about finding where there's low impact, but you're still sounding like you. And I think that was the difficult thing for me all the time is I'm first and foremost an artist, then a musician. So to me, expression was key. I needed to feel and sound like me, but the way I was doing it was damaging. So the technique gave me freedom. Once I learned how to finally do it, which took me a long time to figure out how to do it, then it all clicked, and then it was just liberating because I was focusing less on the technique and more on my genuine sound and my interaction with the music. So there's that, first and foremost. And second of all, is maintaining your health, your lifestyle, your diet, your sleep patterns. You know, to me, sleep is key. You need to sleep. If you're not sleeping on tour, that's the only way you can naturally repair is to sleep. So sleep is key. Hydration, not going out to bars and shouting and yelling after the show, not drinking too much, drying out your voice, and preserving the voice. On days off, sometimes I'll go out by myself for the day and just be completely silent, unless I have to order food or whatever. But there's even days where I'll get the voice thing on my phone and type and not even talk. So it's a bunch of stuff. Just being aware of your body and your voice and taking care of it. Because to me, that's everything. If we don't have a show, there's no reason for me to be away from home. The show is everything. And the audience that paid time and money and babysitters and all this to be there, you want them to have a good experience. So over the years, I've really grown a lot, learned a lot, and started really taking this very seriously, where partying and having fun takes a back seat to the importance of putting on a good show.
I never thought of that. I always thought of, the going out to bars and stuff after gigs, thinking it's, that's because of the alcohol and all of that. But I realise now that how many times you've been out with your friends and stuff and you come back and your throat's sore because you've been like in their ear shouting the entire night. That is absolutely massive. Yeah, I don't sing. I can't sing, to be honest. I think people would rather I damage my voice because it's not pleasant when I try. Moving on from that, we always ask our guests to present us some special tracks. And I'm going to start talking about the artist who inspired you growing up. You've chosen Minor Threat, Seeing Red. Tell us a little bit about this. Why this track? Why this artist? What happened? How did you discover them?
So back growing up in the 90s, we had these mixtapes, where cassette tapes with a bunch of bands on them. You'd sit in front of the record player with your cassette player and drop the needle, press record, press pause, take the needle up, put on a new record. Somebody made me a tape with a bunch of bands on it. I think there was like Dead Kennedys, JFA, 7 Seconds, and then Minor Threat. And when I heard Minor Threat, when that track, Seeing Red, came on, it was this paradigm shift. It was this, what am I listening to? This is insane. The guitars were just like grimy, crunchy, angry sounding. The voice was just pissed off. The song was about being violent. And it was just, whatever this is, I need to know, number one, what else they have. And then number two, how do I do this? I want to do this. And then I remember seeing a VHS cassette tape of them playing live, and the explosion of energy in the audience and the sheer urgency that band put off was mind-blowing to me. And it became an obsession. I'm still, to this day, if you put on Minor Threat, I'm like, yeah. It just does something to me. It's so primal. But what I loved about it too was there was a message of betterment, self-betterment. You don't have to be like them. You can be you and do better. And I loved that about it. I loved the positive message of it, and just sort of the frustration and refusal to be one of the many. I found a uniqueness in this subculture of hardcore, and it became like a religion to me. And that was it for me. Minor Threat was the gateway to me grabbing a microphone and trying to figure out how to do this thing that I was hearing. And yeah, it changed my life. And to this day, Minor Threat are one of my favorite bands.
I'm interested. What were you, before you heard that track and before, you decided this is what I want to do, what were you planning? What was life looking like it might shape up for you?
Martial arts. I was training Shaolin. I was training Kempo. I was taking Aikido and Tai Chi. I was obsessed with Bruce Lee and martial arts, and a disciplined, clean living artist, martial artist, fighting in art form of, the forms and all that. I was obsessed with that. That was my thing. And I was gearing up to be a teacher at a very young age. I think I was 2 years into training, and I'd already started to assist in teaching self-defense classes for women in situations of abuse and rape. Like, it was very serious to me. I loved the art of self-defense. And then when punk rock took over, I quit everything. That was it. Punk rock. That's everything.
I suppose the ideas of some of the subcultures of punk rock and things like that is probably not as disciplined.
No, but it's funny you say that, but it is though. I think when people look at punk, they see nihilism, they see all these things, but to me it was punk and then hardcore, and hardcore was very much about compassion, community, change, showing up to your scene, even if your band wasn't playing, the discipline of being a part of a scene and supporting your friends and donating money to Food Not Bombs and, volunteering at the animal shelter to help the animals out. Like, there was purpose behind a lot of the scene that I grew up with. It was about vegetarianism and Food Not Bombs, anti-war, and, going out and giving food to homeless people and supporting, punk rock squats when they would put on a show as like a bunch of punks living in this warehouse space that need money to like keep the electricity on. You'd go and you'd donate and they would play a show. Like, there was a sense of community there. So as much as though punk is sort of this anarchy chaos thing, the culture I grew up around was very much community orientated.
I think metal in general and, a lot of heavier music does have that because, it's weird. I don't think there's ever been a time in history where that's been the dominant music in a school, for example. So you do search out your little cliques of people who you can, like, as you said, like share tapes and things with. Talking about that, how would you find that now? So no, you didn't grow up in the 90s. You were growing up in 2020s and you're not sharing tapes. You're sharing Spotify playlists, that sort of thing. Is there, there's so much choice nowadays. There are so many bands. Do you think you would have enjoyed it as much? And do you listen to things on Spotify? We've spoken about vinyl. Do you like that direction music's gone in? Because it's a lot more communal, I guess, but obviously there's a lot of bad that goes alongside it.
I think that it's done wonders for the reach of artists and the access. I can remember days where I would have, booklets this big by this big of CDs in my car, thumbing through them to put a new CD on. And now it's just touch a button and I can access things from all over the world that I probably wouldn't buy. And then I hear it and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm obsessed with this new album. So as someone who's consuming music, it's fun because the world is in your fingertips. But as far as like underground music, I'd have to include Bandcamp because there are some artists that you won't find on Spotify or Tidal or Apple Music that Bandcamp has. A lot of the underground punk bands and sort of D-Beat and Crust and bands like that, Bandcamp is a amazing place to go and get it digitally, and you can support the artist directly, which I think is great too. But as far as how you access that nowadays, I think if you're passionate for music, you're going to find it. There are some great playlists out there that have a ton of diversity, but to me it gets overwhelming because I grew up in such a different era, and I think there's a magic to it, man. To try to explain to somebody who's never done this, but going to, I would have to get on the bus, this is before I had a car, pay a fee, get on the bus, ride that bus into the city, get off this stop, walk across the street, open the door, record store. Old guy behind the counter, long dreadlocks, crazy punk rock dude. What do you got this week? Looking through his vinyl, having a conversation with him. Oh, I just saw this band last week, Integrity. I'm obsessed with them. Do you have any Integrities? Oh, I got this 7-inch. It's a rare 7-inch. They put out a split 7-inch with this other band called Mayday. Oh, Mayday, you have any more Mayday? Like, conversation. And then on his wall in the record store are flyers for clubs, for a warehouse space that you wouldn't have advertised on the radio or in a newspaper pre-internet. I see the flyer. There's like a picture of a monkey in a cage, and it's like animal liberation, free the animals. featuring Drop Dead. I'm like, Drop Dead, what a cool name. I'm like, record store guy. He's like, oh yeah, they're like a really fast hardcore band. They're local guys. You should check them out. It's only $5. You can get in with like a can of food. They're donating to Food Not Bombs. I'm like, what is Food Not Bombs? Community conversation. You had to show up. You had to put in effort. And then, you know, oh, I love this band, but you don't have it. Can you order it for me? Oh yeah, no worries. It'll be about 6 weeks. I'll have your record in 6 weeks. Check back with me. You know, 2 weeks later, I show up again, take the bus. Is it in? No, another couple weeks. When I finally got that record I'd been waiting 6 weeks for, and I put it down on the turntable, put the headphones on, and I'm like, oh, wow, what is this? Thumbing through the pages of the vinyl, looking at pictures of the band. They're standing in a graveyard with shadows on their faces. They're not on the internet going, hey guys, this is John from blah, blah, blah. Today we're doing, it's like, it's just this
in a record label office with someone writing the script. Yeah.
Right. It's just these guys in the shadows with a graveyard and a skull. And you're like, this band is crazy, dude. So that magic, that showing up, that community, that conversation, that discovery as a 15-year-old kid seeing a flyer. And then next Friday, I'm at that show and I watch this band Drop Dead destroy this place, and it's insane. And I'm like, this is my home. I'm addicted. I was going to 3-4 shows a week, taking the bus late nights, you know, like that's a whole different world than just going, cool, this is a cool band.
And it's also, you'll listen for 15 seconds, think it might not be your thing, and then you turn over. You're like, done. Right, don't like it. Did you ever have any, you know, were you ever disappointed? Did you ever wait 6 weeks for a record and get disappointed? Or did you listen to it until you loved it?
You listened to it till you loved it because you spent your money on it, you waited for it, you ordered it from, But that forced me, I remember it was a band called Lungfish. They're on Discord.
Name.
They were a band on Discord Records, which was owned by Ian MacKaye from Minor Threat. He had a band called Fugazi. Discord Records put out a bunch of DC hardcore bands. And to me, it was like back then, if a record label had a reputation, you bought what was on the record label. So I remember going in and seeing this album, and it was odd looking. And the guy behind the counter was like, it's cool, it's different, but yeah, give it a shot. It might expand your mind, give you something different to listen to. It was artistic, poetic, spoken word, kind of indie rock stuff. Yeah. And at first I was like, he used the word tetrahedron. Like, what the hell does that mean? Like, this feels like it's being sort of intelligent for intelligence sake, like thinking man spoke. And then I became obsessed with it. I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. It's so different. What else is there in this sort of genre? Like, what is this genre? So then I started to get into like art rock and indie rock and discovering bands like Silver Mount Zion and you know, just stuff that was off the beaten path that wasn't on a label that I recognized. You know, it just made me hunger for more. So even with the purchases that I made that didn't turn out how I thought, it just made my desire to expand my taste musically.
I think this is a brilliant time to talk about the last track that you really got into. So what was that?
Oh, High Viz, a great punk band. I mean, punk is a general term, but they kind of like touch on indie rock. They touch on spoken word, everything we were just sort of talking about. You can't really pigeonhole them into a sound, but the energy that you can hear in the music. And what I like about them too is they didn't change the accent. You can tell they're British.
Yeah, quite Mancunian, I think, or from Leeds, something sort of northwest.
Yeah, and it comes through. There's an attitude, a bravado that comes through in the vocals that really draws you in. And he's telling stories. And the song Trauma Bond was just, I could relate to it. It's about, you know, growing up with like friends who may not be great for you, but like you've known them forever. Like you just have these bonds with people that may not be healthy. They might be the guy that you'd see at the pub every Wednesday and you get shit hammered and you can barely walk home. Like, but they're your friend. Like it just, to me, it opened up all these memories, this one song. And that was my gateway. Like, who are these guys? What is this all about? And what sealed the deal for me was we were just recently on tour in Australia with Iron Maiden. I got off stage. I knew that High Vis was playing across town. You know, toweled off from the stage and made it over just in time to watch them play, and to sit side stage and watch this band explode with just visceral, raw energy, and the audience singing along with all their hearts. And, you know, I stage dove. I got into the pit. I sang along.
Amazing.
I was right there with them every step of the way. And after the set, I was backstage and I just walked up to them and I was like, that was so good. Like, wow, thank you. Like, it brought me back to like why I got into punk rock. You guys, I believe every word you're saying when you're singing. It has this genuine feeling. And I also like that it's not perfectly polished. The vocals go slightly out of key here and there because he's just belting it out. And the music is jangly and melodic and beautiful, as well as being aggressive in punk rock. A band that just, to me, was like a breath of fresh air in a very sort of overproduced, perfectionist world we live in, especially in the metal community. Metal sounds are just so computerized and tracked, and to hear a band just rip it, it was awesome. I love those guys, and they're all just gents, really, really sweet guys as well.
I saw them last year at a festival, and it was sort of the last day, and it's a festival that runs from like Wednesday to Sunday. Last day, they're one of the last bands, and it was in Poland, so, you know, probably not as good with the regional accents. I know for sure, like my wife, for example, you know, if she hears someone from up north, she definitely has to struggle to kind of understand a little bit more. But, you know, they just packed out this little tiny stage. I was nowhere near it. I was nowhere near the stage because they completely packed it out. So I really think they're a band who are hopefully going to go someplace and do some massive, massive things. And I kind of like that resurgence of more of like an indie vibe, a little bit raw as well. Because as you say, like metal and stuff, I think from probably the 2010s onwards, you could tell, you know, Pro Tools was easy. Everyone could get hold of it. Logic's fantastic. But I like that rougher feel. Me personally, anyway.
Agreed.
And talking about gigging, you know, you guys have got massive tour coming up all across the US and Canada. And then are you going to be coming to Europe at any point soon? Can anyone expect to see some KILLSWITCH Engage in 2025 over this side of the world?
Yeah, we're doing a mainland Europe tour, and we're doing a UK tour separately, to give both places the attention it deserves, and also to sort of maintain our energy, so we're not out there too long. So that'll all happen in the autumn. We'll be over there for sure.
That is very, very exciting. I hopefully am going to be able to get to a show. If you're doing Poland, that'd be amazing as well. I don't know if
we are. I hope so too.
No, not many bands do. And if they do, like, I think there's an untapped market here at some stage. Like,
last time we played Warsaw, it was I could hold the microphone out and the audience had every song. They had us.
Yeah.
I barely had to sing if I didn't want to. It was infectious. People were crawling up the walls. The energy in Poland was insane.
It is good. And when we get gigs up here, they are as I say, up in the north bit, because it's a big country, it is fantastic. But I want to also talk to you about some of your favourite artists that you've toured with or who have toured with you. You know, you mentioned Iron Maiden and stuff, but who would be, if you were, let's say you're doing a mini days festival or a, you know, 4 on the bill, you guys are headlining, you can pick any bands, 3 bands underneath, you know, and they could be any size. Who are you going to go for?
Well, In Flames is number one, I'd say. Just, they've always been dear friends, and I have just loved those guys and their sound. We make sense together. They influenced us at an early age, and I'm just a big fan of Anders' voice as well. I just love that band. I got a lot of love for In Flames. I just don't think they get the proper credit they deserve, because they were pioneers with their sound, that melodic sort of European metal. They just did it a certain way. It's great. I love that band.
Yeah. So are they opening the day, or are they coming up before you?
I mean, if they're not main support, that we're co-headlining. You know, I'm not stupid. I know they can hold their own. But I would just love to be on a show with them, because I love those guys. And then I'd say direct support. If we're co-headlining with In Flames, direct support would probably be Fit for an Autopsy.
Amazing.
I admire them musically, but I just love them as people. They're my dudes. All those guys. We toured with them, and they're easy to get along with. But what solidified it for me was we had hit an elk on the road in Sweden. Our bus smashed into an elk, and it was devastating. It was scary. Our bus driver had to get put in the hospital, but by default, we ended up having a day off at this hotel spa up in the mountains of Sweden, and the Fit for an Autopsy guys were there, and we spent the entire day together, you know, soaking in hot tubs and saunas and having drinks. And it just, to me, solidified my love for those guys, because they're just down to earth dudes. But when they hit that stage, they are ferocious. They're a band that I think deserves a lot of the accolades they get.
Who's opening the day?
Who is opening? Let's see. I'm gonna throw in High Vis, dude. Throw those guys in. I like bills that are diverse, and I don't know if that would ever happen, but I would love that. That sounds like a really cool mix of bands to me. But I would honestly be a little intimidated to follow the energy of that band. No, but they're currently just so in the forefront of my brain. It's hard not to continue to talk about them.
And we were talking earlier, I asked you to bring a track from the artist who you most regret never seeing. And you chose The Clash and the track Bank Robber. I mean, were The Clash still going in the 90s? I can't remember if they'd finished by then.
Joe Strummer had the Mescaleros, but The Clash had... I don't know the exact date, but I'd never got the chance. Like, it would have had to have been in the 80s, I think, 80s, early 90s? I don't know, actually. I should know that as a fan, but the opportunity was never there for me. I never saw, The Clash is playing and I can go. I never saw that.
If they were to do, you know, I don't know what you feel about these sort of... they ended in 86, so even if they, I don't know how many of them are still...
I was a kid.
Yeah. How many of them are still with us? Have we still got most of the members of The Clash?
Two guys. I think 2 guys are left, yeah.
Would you, if you could, if they did one of those like holographic type gigs or a VR sort of show, would that be anything you'd be into or not really?
No.
Yeah. I got the impression that would be a no, just from our conversation earlier about.
I feel like it would just be like a little heartbreaking to see that.
Yeah,
honestly, I'd rather just sit and watch YouTube clips than do that.
I saw Queen with Adam Lambert. Basically, I was brought up on Brian May. My mum loves Brian May, so I was learning guitar, and I just thought I have to see Brian May one day. And I would have rather, Adam Lambert's a brilliant singer. Like, he's a very, very talented singer, but it just wasn't Freddie Mercury there, and it just felt a little bit flat for me. So I completely get that thought path on that one.
If it were members of The Clash with other all-star cast paying tribute to, I would totally go to that, though.
Yeah. So, because looking now, I think it might just be the only member who, well, according to this, it was Joe Strummer, Mick Jones, Paul Simonon, and Nicky Headon, and it's only Joe Strummer who isn't with us anymore.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought one of the drummers had passed, but okay, yeah.
Yeah, it could. You know, you never know. Something like that might be able to happen. And finally, the last track on gigs is the artist who played the best gig you've ever seen. And you've gone for Opeth, who I've seen a couple of times, and they are phenomenal. Where was it? Where were they playing?
It was Terminal 5 in New York City, and it was the 25th anniversary of Blackwater Park. And Michael had said at the top of the show, or Mikhail, I think I should pronounce it, said at the top of the show his voice was a little tired, which I thought was just hysterical because there's no way you would have known. But yeah, his demeanor in between songs is great. But to me, that Blackwater Park stands as a benchmark in music. I wouldn't even say just metal. In music, for me, that was a total game changer of songwriting, lyrics, vibe, quality, artwork, the whole package. When that album came out, to me, I was obsessed with that record. And to hear it played from start to finish, in my mind, it may not have been flawless, but it was incredible to watch. And just to be taken, in the Terminal 5 is a couple thousand people, but there were moments where it just felt like a small club because of the intimacy and everybody was there to see this and the energy in the room and hearing that band just do what they do. To me, at that point in their career, that they're untouchable. So a band I admire very much.
And with Killswitch, did they, it's always spoken about, Killswitch's amazing ability to be heavy in the verses and anthemic in the choruses. And it's kind of the opposite, I guess, with Opeth. Often it is, quite a, I don't want to say, it's like sung and then shouted in the chorus. But that light and shade, did that have any sort of influence on you and your singing going into Killswitch, or not really? Were you not listening to Opeth back then?
Oh no, yeah, Opeth was there, but to predate Opeth and a guy who actually had a hand in helping produce Opeth is a guy named Dan Swanö, and he sang for his project called Edge of Sanity. And Edge of Sanity was the first band to do that, in my mind, to do the, I guess you could include My Dying Bride and Anathema. It was that early European melodic metal where you had the singing voice and then the death metal voice.
Yeah.
Edge of Sanity was the first band to do that. And then Opeth shortly thereafter. But I didn't dive into Opeth's catalog until I was back out of Killswitch. So I had left Killswitch and Opeth really entered my life at that point. But I'm inspired by all that. But I would even tie in Faith No More into that. Mike Patton, he was definitely, the album Angel Dust was a huge influence on what you could do with the voice. You don't have to stick to a genre. You don't have to, once the part is aggressive, you don't have to scream over it. You can sing over it or vice versa. So to me, all of that, but Opeth is huge. You can't really talk about, I wouldn't even say metal. You can't even talk about music without having to mention them. I just think they're that brilliant.
And Faith No More as well. We'll play some Faith No More on the show because I've never seen them live. Actually, that's one of the bands that I'm hoping, because they've kind of called off some shows and stuff. I'm hoping they will get back and do some more gigs because I've never seen Mike Patton live and his voice just astounds me every single time.
So good.
So Jesse, I want to talk about your biggest musical influences. We asked you to sort of name 4, and you started with a guy, another, I'm getting a theme here about vocalists whose voices are quite unusual. And Tom Waits, I'm putting him in that category. Tell us a little bit about Tom Waits. And actually, I'm going to ask you for some recommendations because I've worked with a lot of people who love Tom Waits. I've never been able to get into him myself, so I want an album to go away and listen to.
Oh, that's a difficult one. To give you a gateway, I guess maybe a less strange one might be good for you to grasp. His songwriting being a little more, I don't want to say cohesive, but let's just go with Bad As Me. If you start with Bad As Me, goes to the song Raised Right Men. I love that song. I love the message of it. I love the sound of it. Bad As Me is great. Hell Broke Loose. Those are all like classic songs for me. They were kind of gateways for me. But if I could just mention a song that you should listen to, being a man in a relationship. How long have you guys been together in your relationship, if I may ask?
It'll be 10 years this year, married 6 years this year.
Perfect. Yeah. So you've been in an older relationship. You've been together for a while. Kiss Me Like a Stranger.
Okay.
That is a song to his wife, who is his songwriting partner. She's sort of the ghostwriter she helps him more than she's ever been mentioned. They're partners. The song is about her, and it's about wanting to be strangers for the night, like wanting to rediscover love through the eyes of a stranger. It's the most romantic song I think anyone's ever written about their partner, and it brings me to tears, and the sound of his voice. It's so good. It's such a good song. So start there. But okay. Tom Waits, how do I even... He's a unique man. He embodies to me artist, the word artist, because it's not just about his music. It's about his persona. It's about his performance. It's the way he is in interviews. He is just on all the time. He is a cartoon character, if you will. And he's absolutely brilliant. The sheer genius that oozes out of him without effort, because it's not a put on. Tom Waits that's just how he is. He's just a brilliant artist. But what I love about him is there's no boundaries there. He'll do a spoken word song piece with him playing a 70s sounding organ And the whole song is about a guy who's just tired of his life, and he just decided to burn his house down and start over and just drive away and drink a beer in his car while he's driving away. Like, and you leave the piece ends and you're like, there's no redemption in that. It's just this odd story about this guy who set his own house on fire because he was sick of his wife and hated his life. And it's like, what is that? It's just, I don't know. To
No
me,
happy ending to it then.
No,
It's just...
but it's funny. And the way he says it and the metaphors he uses, the words he uses, it's just pure poetry. But, he could sing a song about an empty house and, a house is only a home when you live in it. And he has a way with words that you're chuckling one moment at the absurdity of what he's doing. And even the sounds, him banging on a pot to make a sound or grinding of a gear. Like he uses auxiliary percussion that's odd. And you're sort of like, this is weird. I'm chuckling. And then the next moment you're in tears because you're like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life. He's able to do all that. And then, for anyone who's not familiar, look up a live performance of the song Chocolate Jesus. And he's describing, in a way, like religion as being a sort of chocolate-coated treat that you could have. But to watch his performance, he's got a megaphone to a microphone. He's got glitter in his suit jacket pockets. So during the bridge of the song, he's throwing glitter around stage and dancing. And there's been performances where he'll have all the lights in the house out. And he's got this single light bulb attached to a hook. And as he's singing, he's manipulating the lighting, walking around stage, changing the lighting in his face. During the creepy part, it's like he's got the light underneath him, so he looks creepy. And then the part where the song goes up into a different sound, he raises the light bulb, you see his face. He's just constantly performing.
Yeah.
It
sounds a bit like a theatrical thing as well as just music.
He is a vaudevillian genius. And he started out as just playing piano in the 70s and playing sort of like, I guess, bluesy sort of folk music. And as his career progressed, his voice became raspier and raspier. His ideas became more abstract and psychedelic and strange. Swordfish Trombones, if you want to dive into the depth of his strangeness, the album Swordfish Trombones is just a psychedelic, odd masterpiece. Following in the lines of like someone like Captain Beefheart, just these musicians who threw out all the rules, probably never even considered what the rules were, and just created a world, a sonic visual world of abstract expression. And he is a hero of mine through and through. I think he's one of the most brilliant artists, period. Not just music, but visually. Even the way he dresses, his style, the way his swagger is, the way he carries himself in interviews. The king of cool, man. There's nobody cooler than Tom Waits.
I always like the idea of recording someone like that, the raspy voice, just picking the right microphone and getting that, hearing it hit. Right when you're in a studio with that on a big speaker, that would be lovely. But I've only ever heard Jockey Full of Bourbon. I think that's the Tom Waits song. I think that's Tom Waits, isn't it? I'm hoping I'm right there. That's
a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I love him and I know him, but I don't claim to know every single song.
But I do. Oh yeah, it is Tom Waits. But I also do know the song Chocolate Jesus, but only covered by Beth Hart. So I need to definitely, you've given me a lot there to think about and to go away and listen to and watch as well. I'm going to give that a go, and especially Kiss Me Like a Stranger. I'll listen to that as soon as this is finished.
He's also a brilliant actor. Many people don't know this, but if you've ever watched Bram Stoker's Dracula with Keanu Reeves, do you know the guy in the cell that's like obsessed with Dracula, and he's got the master, he's got the glasses on, he's like eating rats with the cage around his head? That's Tom Waits.
I've never seen it. I'm awful with movies, so I feel really bad now.
No, it's good. But he's a brilliant actor as well. He shows up in places you wouldn't expect. He's a genius. I think I've said that a few times. Genius!
Well, the next artist that you picked as a musical influence, a bit different from Tom Waits, Bad Brains. Tell me about Bad Brains.
Bad Brains were huge on me. Sonically, they blended hardcore, like really fast, fairly complicated hardcore because it's not just bar chords. It's not Ramon style punk. There's actual music being like notes and, you know, complexities, but the veracity, the speed, and then the power of seeing, especially in the punk and hardcore world, a band that's a bunch of black guys, man, like just brothers representing punk and coming from a completely different place. Like they had jazz in their sound too. And also a message of power, a message of positivity, a message of revolution. You know, they were a spiritual band. They were fueled by Rastafarian beliefs and just this revolutionary idea of bringing down a corrupt system that is Babylon. I loved it. It was so punk. It changed everybody. And I know anyone who saw the early formation of that band in the 80s when I was still a little kid, but people that I know that were there when they were exploding onto the scene, there was nothing like it. Nothing. To this day, you can watch live at CBGB's from 1982. Look up Bad Brains live at CBGB's and watch. It's like the second coming of the Messiah, watching HR on stage. The ferocity that he just has, this Bob Marley with like aggression in him. It feels important when you're watching that band. During that time frame, to me, there was nobody that could touch that energy. And KILLSWITCH had the opportunity to play with a later incarnation of the band, and they had sort of lost some of that real magic, but it was still an honor to share the stage with them. But they're a band that I know changed. They were like a wrinkle in time. They changed everything for everybody in hardcore and punk. And I would even say bigger than that. You know, people that worshipped at the altar of the Bad Brains were the Beastie Boys. We would have no Beastie Boys without the Bad Brains. So their influence is just huge. And even on the early KILLSWITCH stuff, when you hear me using terms like Babylon and I and all, that's directly from the Bad Brains. I am 100% hijacking the Bad Brains on the early KILLSWITCH.
How difficult do you think it must be for bands to kind of try and maintain that, you know, that raw energy and aggression and stuff from the beginning? Like, if they are that kind of punkier band, how did, you know, you say, you know, they'd maybe lost a bit of the magic. Is that just because it doesn't shock you anymore, do you think?
No, it's
because
because
know what to expect.
The singer sort of, I think he's been diagnosed with schizophrenia, but he had his battles, he had his demons, he had his mental issues, and he kind of just snapped. You can watch interviews of him in the early days, and he's there. He's right there in your face. He's on a mission. And then, you know, HR, God bless him, where he is now, he's a very different person. Yeah. He's still there, but it feels there's a disconnect. You know, age and mental health has taken its toll, and it's different. Even then, the performance is different. He's really not moving much. He's kind of very casual. You know, they're playing, you know, the rest of the band is into it, playing these songs, and he's sort of just still kind of just going through it. So it's very different. But there's an interesting documentary you can watch on it where it talks about what he went through. There's even a book called Finding Joseph I, which is about his life and his struggles. So I feel for the man, and I have nothing but respect for him. But the Bad Brains of the 80s to any newer version I've seen from the 90s on is very different. Yeah.
And moving on from that, a band who we've kind of touched on, actually, because you mentioned Dan, I'm going to try and pronounce his name, Dan Swanö, from Edge of Sanity, another band who've really influenced you. So give us a little sell on them.
Yeah, so again, as I had mentioned, the vocal style, the growling and the sort of mid-range singing akin to, Life of Agony, Only in Living Witness, Danzig, that sort of like warm mid-tone voice, and then straight up death metal vocals and black metal vocals, and storytelling. They have an album, but it's actually one song called Crimson. It's a 45-minute song, and it keeps you interested somehow. Yeah. The songwriting is so brilliant. And he wrote and recorded everything himself. Even the tones of the guitars are different. It's just a band that really stands out. that I used to sing along to and learned how to do what I do through singing along to that band on a regular basis. And I think from their first few records, like, I wouldn't be who I am as a vocalist without them. Dan Swanö's a genius. He's just a brilliant mind that's done various projects, but Edge of Sanity is the one that sticks out to me.
And knowing that it's going to be difficult on a radio station to play a 45-minute track, is there one that you would suggest?
Let's go with... It's called Twilight. It's off Purgatory Afterglow, which is the record before Crimson. But you'll get a taste of like what he does with his soothing sort of sung vocals, and then the growling and death metal, and the blending of styles that they have.
And now, before we touch back on KILLSWITCH, there's one last band who are sort of they're one of the big crossover bands who managed to kind of seep into almost everyone's music collection somewhere, regardless if you would say, you know, you'd particularly like a certain genre. Public Enemy. Tell me about your connection with Public Enemy.
So my love for Public Enemy started after seeing Scott Ian from Anthrax wearing a Public Enemy shirt in a video. He kind of, you know, I have told him this, he kind of introduced me to them, and they very quickly became one of my favorites. The video and the song 911 is a Joke was my gateway. I was like, what is this? This is so strange. And I'd never heard anyone complain about 911 being a joke, like the emergency calling. But the whole premise of the song is poor people in the ghetto, especially black folks in America, you know, emergency services, police, they don't jump to help as quickly as they would in a well-to-do white neighborhood. So at a young age, it opened my eyes to cultural racism, to like all of the problems. And from that, it was like, welcome to the Terror Dome. You know, by the time I get to Arizona, all these songs that were just eye-opening to me because it was so political. And then Fight the Power was the anthem. You know, I'm getting into punk rock, and I love old school hip hop. And then Public Enemy puts out Fight the Power. And it was during the time when we had the Rodney King riots in LA and police brutality was in the headlines. And you had a band that was just protesting that and giving you a perspective that maybe you wouldn't have gotten. You know, I was a poor white kid, and I definitely lived in black neighborhoods, but because of my skin color, I was treated differently. I had privileges that I didn't even realize I had. Public Enemy opened my eyes to the other side of that. And it gave me a sense of empathy. It gave me a sense of wanting to know why there was this injustice. Yeah. And like the empowerment that I saw of their live performance. I never got to see them in the early days. I saw them in the 90s, but watching their performances, and they have these militant guys called the S1Ws that are just doing these military positions as Chuck D is spitting facts and knowledge and wisdom, and Flava Flav wearing a clock around his neck is just being this weird sort of court jester. There was nothing like it. Like, what is this? It was a cultural phenomenon, and he was dropping wisdom and knowledge and educating, you know, a young 13, 14-year-old me into like, what else is there? If there's this in hip hop and music and culture, what else is there? So it made me watch certain films. It made me pay attention to certain comedians like Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy, and just be submerged into black culture. And it very much played a huge influence on me, on what I like and the music I listened to and the comedy that I liked and the movies that I liked, and just opened my eyes to the black experience in America. And it still is something that's relevant to me and to this day, because we still have cultural racism. Whoa. It's alive and well. And
the thing about it now as well is obviously things like social media giving a voice to imbeciles and morons. But, you know, now you'll see something like that and you just get a thread of comments saying to people, you know, musicians and things, why don't you stick to music and let the politicians deal with the politics? And it's like, don't they understand how powerful these messages are, and like why music should never be, you know, what would people sing about if they had to stick to music?
Well, what is politics? I ask people that, what is politics? Politics is all of us
Yeah, it's democracy, isn't it?
Yeah, just because I'm an artist doesn't mean I shouldn't speak on things,
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about racism. Like, why is that even included into that conversation? And some people it is. Racism is a topic that's about human compassion. It's not a political thing. And it's also a fact, you know? And anyone who denies it or like, it's not so bad anymore, go into a poor neighborhood in New Orleans and talk to somebody. Go into South Central Los Angeles. Go into places that have been burned to the ground in Los Angeles. Talk to those people and see how much help they're getting right now. See how much aid they get. See how quickly 911 responds to their calls. I'm sorry, the divide is there. Either you're aware of it because you've talked to people, you're in the communities, you know these people, or you just assume by what you've seen on the internet that things are a certain way. And the
reporting of that over in Europe has been bizarre because it's suddenly, you know, you get a news story and it's like the fire has almost reached celebrities' houses in LA. And it's like, why would people care more about that? Like,
they do.
Yeah.
Because they do.
Why?
That's
you know?
why.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, celebrity worship is absolute garbage. I despise any of the sort of putting somebody on a higher pedestal when it comes to like survival. When it comes to basic human rights, like, who cares if there's celebrity there? Ugh. Drives me nuts.
It feels like a good time to listen to some Public Enemy. And
Fight the power!
Right, Jesse, look, I have kept you for far too long. But before we let you go, I want to talk just one last time about this consequence out on the 21st of February. I've got two questions. Firstly, KILLSWITCH Engage, 25 years. What is your legacy in metal?
That is a good question. I would say a genuineness. There's a genuineness to the music we make, the lyrics, even with the lineup changes, like genuine guys out there just playing and doing what they love. You know, there's no real posturing going on. You're not seeing an act. You're not seeing a put on. You know, we're not putting on costumes and it's just dudes up there like living passionately through the music and having fun too. I think there's a legacy of fun. You know, a band that is okay to smile and laugh on stage and make jokes. Like, I love that. It's all part of who we are as a band. And if you know, outside of the music, which hopefully people still care about it when we're dead and gone, but the legacy of like a band that enjoyed what they did. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not big on music videos at all, but my favorite music video of all time is In Due Time. Because that, you know, you start and everyone is playing, and I know obviously, hey, there's cameras on. I know it's not like Candid, but you know, everyone's playing, having fun, there's energy in the room, and then you walk in. Sorry?
That's pretty accurate, though. That video is pretty accurate.
It's the moment as well when you come in, and it's like, for me, that is the most badass I'm back I've ever seen in music in any way. That music video, absolutely love it. And that's kind of my KILLSWITCH Engage legacy, just that song and that music. But also, you know, I'd say definitely you show that you can be you can play aggressive music with thoughtful messages and, you know, meanings to songs, which is fantastic. And obviously there's going to be loads more of that in this consequence, which is out on the 21st of February. Final question. You got to sell the album. I want it in a sentence. Why should people go out? And I'm going to encourage people not to go on Spotify, not to go on Apple Music. I want people to go out and buy it on CD, on vinyl, whatever else it's available on. Some bands still do cassettes. What is your sales pitch, I should say?
Sales pitch. I'm never good at this stuff. There's a genuine story to unravel about all of us and humanity in this record.
I think that's good.
There you go.
I'm buying it. I'm buying it for sure. Look, Jesse, I've been a fan of yours for so many years. It's been so great to sit down and chat to you about music, and I'm so excited for 2025 and onwards for KILLSWITCH Engage. Thank you so much for joining us on Primordial Radio.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And thanks for continuing to promote a record that we're all really stoked on. Much appreciated.
Primordial Radio.